The epee parries, I'm sure this doesn't really need said, but I'll say it anyway. The epee parries are fundamentally the foil parries, but we don't necessarily do them in the same way, and we don't necessarily have the preferences that you might use in foil. You don't necessarily have the same preferences in epee. Okay, so we've already touched on a couple of parries. Just through the process of what we've been doing. Just a straight hit, cease riposte. So we've already done cease, en garde. Change of engagement pass, we've already done pass. The other parry you will have seen Matt doing, my demonstrations, is seconde. Now this is very important parry for epee. Many of you will be familiar with octave, for instance, as used traditionally, not so much these days, traditionally in foil, en garde. So the parry of octave, so just take the parry and no riposte, is very much like that. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the parry of octave whatsoever. Okay, again. Right. The disadvantage for epee is that it's essentially a weak parry, and also the point tends to be in the wrong place. En garde. The point tends to be down here. Now, that's fine if I'm going to run onto it, that's okay. But it means if he is riposting, he has to lift the point to make a hit. Okay? If I rush him, en garde, so parry. If I rush him, it's easy for me to push the blade out the way. Relatively easy. Okay? So we need to be a little cleverer than that and say, because of the randomness in epee, because people can clash very regularly at epee, remember, kora epee is not illegal. Okay? So it's very important to remember that. It's part of the discipline. It can be a little bit more brutal, so we possibly need something which is going to give us some strength. So that's where seconde comes in, en garde. So just take the parry of seconde and stop. Now you will notice that his knuckles are now on top. So he has moved from here to here. He's effectively rolled the blade round, and the blade is practically parallel to the floor. It is not down here. So this is very strong indeed. Okay, it's like a rod. En garde. So take the parry. Now, to make a conventional hit from there, he will now corkscrew his hand back so that the thumb comes on top, deliver the hit here, and then follow through. So the route to the hit is as short as is possible. En garde. So seconde. Seconde. So the hit, parry, seconde, stop. The hit point only has to travel. I'll remove my elbow so you can see. The point only has to travel that far. And because it's a very strong corkscrewing action, it delivers it with considerable gusto. Okay? Very difficult to defend that. Okay, it can be defended, but it's not easy to defend. The other big advantage is parry and stop.
Yeah.
If I am rushing him, I'm rushing straight onto a point, right here. He doesn't have to do anything. And I can't hit him unless I go all the way around here. If he had parried and pushed, my point would have been away over there. So we'll do a close action seconde. There. So, bearing in mind that my opponent may not know how I'm going to execute this action, in other words, where I'm going to finish on the piste, he's got all the bases covered already, en garde. So conventional parry, riposte. Close. right? He's got both done.